Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Community Planning Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Today's Wednesday, November 16th. Let the record reflect that Mr. Winograd and myself are both present as members of the committee. Councilwoman Pullen is present. I did receive communication from Councilor Zdanowicz that he would be unable to participate by video. He would try to call in, but uncertain as to whether or not that was going to happen. So just want to get that on the record. First item of business would be the approval of minutes. So without objection, approve the minutes of the October 25th, 2022 meeting.
No objection.
Okay, minutes are approved. We have no communications. Number 4, we're moving right along, Mr. Ledwith. Already to you for staff reports.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We have with us this morning, we have our Director of Community Development, Dwayne Martin, as well as Kristen Gorski, our Economic Development Coordinator, and Dan Page, our Economic Development Specialist. And for the committee this morning, we have various department updates. And I will turn things over to Mr. Martin, who can give an update on what's happening with various projects throughout the Community Development Department. For you, Mr. Chair, I'll turn things over to Dwayne.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Martin, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to highlight a few of the activities that are going on in the 3 divisions of community development. First, I'll start off with our West Hartford Center Infrastructure Master Plan, just to give a quick overview as to the status of that project, which has been going on for a while. We're still in the outreach phase. We've done one public workshop, as you're well aware, and the next step is to meet as needed with boards and commissions. And because we had such a great interest from the pedestrian and bicycle community, we thought it best to have Stantec meet with the pedestrian and bicycle committee to give a presentation and answer any questions that they have. They will then pull representatives of the pedestrian bicycle committee into a greater stakeholder group for boards and commissions, which has yet to be scheduled. So Stantec plans on attending the December 12th PVC meeting to give that presentation. In addition to that, we've been meeting with the consultant to go over many items related to the scope of this project. In our last meeting, they shared us glimpses of what they call cross sections for the roadways that would be designed by them that could see some pretty dramatic changes, including LaSalle Road and Farmington Ave. If you recall, those are in the scope for design for reconstruction. First LaSalle, with hopes of getting into that construction project in 2023, followed by Farmington Avenue in 2024. So the cross sections, they have not submitted them to us yet for review and comment, but they did show us those virtually in a meeting to get some initial feedback. And there's many different cross sections that they provided or displayed for us. So more to come on those. Beyond that, we've asked them to provide a technical memorandum to address LaSalle Road. There's been a lot of discussions about LaSalle Road, both with regards to changes in design and many elements that come with that, but more specifically regarding the travelway and the use of that road as far as a one-way street, northbound, southbound, two-way street, or close the street, whether it's for short term or as a more permanent solution. So they're going to provide a technical memorandum. And what I've asked is for them to send that to us at the beginning of December. Give them a little bit more time to produce that. They've already done a lot of work already kind of leading up to this, and they showed some of that to us in the last virtual meeting that we had with them. It's complicated as far as the different scenarios and how it impacts the neighborhood and the businesses in that area. So they need a little bit more time. They're going to provide a technical memorandum. I also wanted to receive that technical memorandum in advance of the application of Arapahoe going forward. That way, if there are questions from the neighborhood or the business owners or just the community in general, we'll have more information at our disposal to be able to answer some of those more challenging questions regarding traffic flow in and around that area. So more to come on that. We have targeted January 9th for the second public workshop to be held in the Town Hall Auditorium. It'll be very similar in format and duration as to the first public workshop. but in this case, they will actually provide a presentation. We don't have an outline or duration, but what they've sort of indicated to us is they probably would do the same presentation twice on January 9th, one in, say, mid-morning and one in the evening, to give people an opportunity with their schedules to be able to see that information. I believe the presentation is going to be sort of a snapshot of where they started and where they are now, and some of the elements that I just mentioned, possibly with the South Road or some of the other questions that they asked in the last public workshop or in the survey, to give people an idea of some of the directions that they're heading. Hope to get an outline and more information and share it with the manager in this group so that we're better prepared and informed leading up to that January 9th workshop. I'll pause there before I move on to the next topic. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'd also like to note for the record that Mayor Cantor has joined the meeting. Good morning, Madam Mayor. Okay, Mr. Martin, continue, please.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to mention, if anybody drove through the center this morning, they are removing the concrete barriers that were around the expanded outdoor dining. So those are scheduled to be removed today, and with the help of Public Works. Some of those barriers will get relocated to Fern Street. The Fern Street Bridge had the water-filled barriers, which were required to shift traffic over the Fern Street Bridge near Fern Ridge Park. That was required by the Department of Transportation because that bridge is deteriorating and we needed to shift traffic away from the weakest part of that bridge, which is the south side. Concerns about having those water-filled barriers, obviously with colder temperatures. So there was an opportunity to shift some of those concrete barriers over to the bridge on Fern Street. So that will happen probably today as well. And that is leading into a construction project. So we're getting closer to be able to put that Fern Street Bridge replacement out to bid. We're just not quite there yet. But again, I hope to start that project in the spring. A couple other things that I wanted to mention. We've had some staffing, I'll call them impacts, both good and bad. So the engineering division, we've hired a civil engineer 1, which gets the engineering division back up to full staff, a total of 10 employees. They have quite the list of work to get caught up on, but this has been a huge improvement and put them in a better place as we prepare for next year's busy construction season. So good news there for the engineering division. Planning and zoning, we're also seeking to hire. We have to advertise a full-time planning and zoning technician, which is a position that has been left vacant. That will get the planning and zoning division back to the 5 full-time staff that they had a few years back. We're hoping to have that position filled going into January of next year. And then in the building inspection division, we've had a part-time building inspector leave the town. He took a full-time job in another community, so good for him. Bad for us. And then we've also had a full-time building inspector give his retirement notice, or I should say separation from town notice, effective December 31st. So you may have seen that we've posted the recruitment of a part-time and a full-time building inspector to backfill those 2 positions, hoping again to fill those as soon as possible, but more than likely would be in January. And that rolls into our City View update. So as I've been mentioning before, we're doing a City View upgrade, which will be a big improvement. It'll take a little while to get sort of comfortable, both from the staff level as well as the applicants, but we've been making good strides on testing and training. Some of the offices have had to close while they go through training because it involves so many staff. Currently today, as an example, the building division is getting trained this morning or continue to be trained this morning. So this again will be the building inspection, engineering, and planning and zoning divisions will all have this City View online permitting platform available for applicants to submit applications 24/7. It will also allow people to pay with a credit card. And we have 3 kiosks set up, 1 per division right now in each location, so that staff can get comfortable with that. And that gives flexibility if people decide to come in to apply for permits in person, or if they still wanted to pay with cash or check, they'll have that option. So we are looking to go live with the City View launch on Monday, December 5th. that will impact City View a couple days prior, the Thursday and Friday. I think it's the 1st and 2nd of December. City View will actually be shut down. So we'll still be able to take paper applications as we transition to the online platform on that Monday. There will be IT and the City View programmers available to provide technical support should issues arise during that initial deployment of this new online application. So fingers crossed, we're hoping that this will go smoothly, but inevitably there will be some issues that come up and hopefully we can adapt. We've also, we have plans to roll out training for other staff that it may not use City View every day, but has access to it. A couple other benefits to mention. One is that any property owners will have the ability to create a login to City View to track their permits. Oftentimes contractors will say things that may not be completely true about when they submitted or the schedule. And so they'll have that ability to sort of keep tabs on that. Or if anybody just wanted to see if somebody obtained a permit, they'll have that ability as well. So good news on the City View front. And like I said, hopefully it goes smoothly. And that wraps up my department report. I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Martin? Mr. Winograd.
Just a couple of questions. Can you get update on where we are with the housing plan? How's that committee's doing and when we can expect that?
Yeah, I can take that, Mr. Winograd. So we are actually right now finalizing a draft of the affordable housing plan. As folks may remember, we formed a advisory housing working group committee that's been working together for the last 8 or 9 months anyways. So what is next up is a draft of that plan will be shared with the committee sometime over the next couple of weeks. And at that point, we would take in some feedback from the committee, finalize that draft and present it to the town council. At this point, it'd probably be in a January meeting. It probably wouldn't happen for the December 13th meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And just, sorry, I'm looking through the report. There were a couple things I wanted to. In the report that's online, you noted the inspections and permits, sort of definitely going up this fall. And permits in particular. How does that compare to longer historical? It basically goes, the chart goes back to October 2021. I'm just wondering how the higher numbers compare to pre-COVID, if you know.
Sure, Dwayne Martin, I'll answer that. So it's higher than pre-pandemic. Pandemic did have a little bit of an increase or a spike depending on the time. I think a lot of people were reinvesting their money that they may not have been able to use for vacations on their own property. So we did see that increase in activity. Tracking this now for probably 2 years, it seems like the activity in the building division definitely has some peaks, and you can see that not so much in the summertime. It seems to get a little bit slower. People are busy doing other things, I guess, but usually in the fall, winter, it picks up. And so it's, goes up and down. That trend seems to continue year in and year out. But overall, I would say we're still on that upward trend of increased activity of permits and inspections. And I don't see that going away. It seems to be a positive or an upward trend on that.
If I could add to that, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Winograd, to follow up on some of Dwayne's comments, with all the activity that's happened, and Ms. Gorski will certainly touch on some of the things that are happening from an economic development standpoint. There are, as we know, a number of large projects that will be coming through over the course of the next 8, 12, 24 months throughout town that will continue to have an impact on our building division, plan reviews, number of inspections. When you look and we'll start to share some of this data, I think, at our next meeting in December. When you look at our number of inspections performed by each inspector, you'd be hard pressed to find a community in Hartford County that's at the number that we are at right now. So it's just a tremendous workload that our inspectors are taking on. Certainly you can see the impact that it's having on reviews and upwards of sometimes 3-4 week delays and some of the inspections that are taking place throughout town. So we may be looking at possibly requesting an additional inspector for the department to meet this workload. Right now, our inspections per inspector are almost 50% higher than some of our neighboring communities. So they're working hard, meeting the demand, but I do think we may need some support in the building division, and we'll talk more about that with some more formal data at our next meeting. Happy to answer any questions on that as well. Thank you.
Through you, David, I've just one more question. I know few of us, you and Dwayne, were at the bike ped conversation with a lot of feedback concerning Fern and traffic compliance. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that. We had a lot of good discussion at that meeting that I observed, in terms of dealing with that. But if you could just give a bit of an update on where we are with those discussions about Fern and maybe what next steps are.
Sure, you want to take that, Dwayne?
Sure, thank you. Anytime we have residents that reach out to us with regards to concerns for traffic safety, we do what we can to review the crashes and work with the police department. So that's the immediate activity that we are following up on with regards to Fern Street. But Fern Street is a bigger issue. It's not just focused in one particular intersection. And so our plan is to bring a consultant in to address a greater need. Fern Street would be a piece of this, which is mentioned in our plan of conservation and development, which is to look at the high crash corridors, for which we believe Fern Street would fit in with that category, unfortunately. So I've put a scope of work together, which is actually twofold. It's to review the high crash corridors throughout town, but also to update our bicycle facility plan. There's overlap in the consultant's skill set to address those, and they're somewhat related. It's also an opportunity on the crash study side to evaluate crashes involving vulnerable users. Again, it folds into the same skill set and interest. So I've updated the chairperson for the PBC to give him that information, and I've also agreed to share the scope of work. The Pedestrian Bicycle Commission has somewhat of a different lens at times with regards to how they look at our work. So in the interest of transparency, I offered to share that with them before we put it out to bid to get a consultant. So my hope is to have that scope out to bid to secure a consultant within the next 2 to 3 months. I'm estimating 6 months to complete the work, but it could be done much quicker than that. The results would be obviously an update to the plan, but also recommendations to address these crashes, including along the Fern Street corridor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wintergrad, for your excellent questions. I did have one question, and the manager addressed it a little, and that was on the staffing level in our building department. It was noted today that we'll be down 1.5 positions in the building department. And then in the next breath, we talked about all the new projects that are going to be taking place. And I know that one of the biggest frustrations that people have expressed to us over the years was how long does it take to go from start to finish in West Hartford to get rolling here? And we just don't. And I think that I'm glad to hear that we're being proactive on this. We understand what's potentially in the pipeline so that we can try to minimize the impacts that homeowners and businesses can expect with respect to review by the town. So I just wanted to add that as a commentary. And I do think that, Mr. Manager, if necessary, bring it to obviously the council if it so warrants, so that we can address this concern. We recently just approved two very large housing projects. We do have a third on Park and Prospect that probably consumes a lot of time as well. So those are three housing projects that I can just rattle off the top of my head that consume probably a lot of time of the staff. So, and we're aware of a few others that are coming in. And while these may be the larger ones, there are smaller entities that are also looking to move into West Hartford that will be renovating existing spaces and things of that nature. So I think what a lot of people don't realize when they start a business is they think they just go in, turn the key, and boom, you're open, and that's really not how it works. And some of these very entrepreneurial type people don't have that in their business plan, that it could take additional time before they start to see revenues coming in. So I think that we can be more business friendly by taking the path that you suggested this morning. So I applaud you for those efforts, but should it warrant an earlier action on behalf of the council, please keep us apprised. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate those comments, and we will be doing that. Mr. Martin and I had discussed when we did post those positions, a part-time and a full-time position, utilizing that pool to potentially add an additional position, so we wouldn't have to go back out once we had approval from the council to fill a position, to post another position and go through the 4 or 5 week process. We'd have a pool of candidates to choose from this current recruitment. So more to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for your report. The agenda only lists a staff report with community development update. I'm certain there will be others. Mr. Ledwith, you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have our Economic Development Coordinator, Kristen Gorski, with us this morning. And Kristen just wanted to touch on a couple of things that are happening around town. Kristen, maybe you can start with the wayfinding signage project.
Great. Good morning, Kristen Gorski, Economic Development Coordinator. Yes, as Mr. Levitt said, we are currently underway with our wayfinding signage project. So what that is taking a holistic approach at looking at signage throughout town. What that means is, every corner of town, municipal buildings, business district signage, historic, parks signage, the whole nine, and trying to put together a plan of what we have and what gaps we have. So we currently are working with a firm that we hired on back in September. They are called Merge, MERJE. So they are out of Westchester, Pennsylvania, excuse me. So they do really great work. They've done a lot of work in Connecticut. Currently, they're working with Mansfield, as well as they've done work with University of Hartford and with New Haven. But they are a national firm where they've done work in Phoenix, Savannah, San Diego, so on and so forth. So when we met and went through a competitive RFP process and we interviewed them, we felt as though they were the most forward-thinking companies that we had interviewed, and they definitely differentiated themselves. We felt as though, their style, approach, as well as the graphic design that they have in-house matched what we were looking for in terms of our project in West Hartford. So what we are currently working with them on is they're going to come to town currently we're planning the week of December 5th. So December 5th, 6th, and 7th. We are going to do a tour with them. They are going to do additional inventory themselves. And then we are also pulling together a number of stakeholder groups to start to solicit information, again, in terms of what folks see out in the community, what they desire in terms of signage. And then based on Merge best practices and wayfinding signage best practices, we'll start to pull together what do we need to propose to fill in the gaps. Also, right after those stakeholder meetings, we're looking to launch a survey that will go on the town's website. So very similar to the center infrastructure master plan process. We will have a web page on the town's website, and that will list some highlights about the project, a summary of the project. It will launch that survey, and then, what we'll look to do, probably since we're going to run into the holidays, probably in the early January timeframe, we'll look to do a public meeting where we can invite the public and solicit additional feedback and information. In addition to all of that, we have an internal staff working group comprised of public works, facilities, community development, parks, and I believe that is a lot of folks from planning and zoning. So we are helping to pull together any plans, studies, any observations that we have or have heard from the community over the years, and filter that over to Merge to put into some of their findings. What I had talked to the manager about is potentially bringing Merge to CPED either in December or January, whatever would work for this committee, because they certainly would like to get some feedback from the committee in terms of the project scope and what thoughts that the committee has in terms of what we want to work into this ultimate plan. So what we've scoped out is about an 8-month process for this. Part of the process will be, once we work through a whole community outreach process, as I just outlined, we will work with them to start to put together this wayfinding signage plan. Part of that will include graphic design. So they will literally say, based on the inventory of what we think you need, based on your desires as a community, here is the inventory of signs that we suggest, and we're going to work together with them on a brand new branding and signage. And what we had talked about is there's different branding in parks, that's newer branding, and we have the newer town logos. So trying to figure out how to coordinate everything that we've started to move forward in the last couple of years to update our branding as a community. But luckily, again, we have Helen, who's on that internal working committee, and Merge will be working with the Parks Committee in order to get feedback from them. So I believe that that's a good summary for now. Any questions on that process?
Seeing none. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one other update, and then after this update, I just wanted to turn over to Dan for a couple of minutes. So I wanted to touch on the ARPA Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Program. So as the committee knows, we had gone through an initial first round back in applications were due in August. So we had received 134 applications out of that round. We are still working to finalize all of those grant applications. So approximately 100 out of those are folks that were awarded grants of $10,000. And so that was either for COVID-related reimbursements, or if they would like to establish a new program in response to the public health crisis. And so out of that, we still have a couple folks that we're trying to chase down to get final documentation to complete our records that we will need for our federal reporting. And I just wanted to mention Patty Lewis has been in finance, has been such a great partner in this. She has been helping to support this program and doing a lot of the review of the applications and the financial documents and reporting. So she has been a tremendous help throughout this process. So probably, I would say about 90 of the 100 that we're approving, they have grant acceptance award letters that have gone out. And basically what that states is, we have gone through our process. We have all the documents that we need from you. This is our final document. Please sign this document that says that, you're stating all of your application information and the financial records you submitted are accurate. And you sign that, send that back. We keep that on file, and within 30 days, we will send you your check by mail. So we're currently working to collect those to close out that first round. And then we relaunched the program on November 1st. So far, we've received over 20 new applications. What outreach has looked like to make sure that we are covering our bases. We have done a press release. It's re-announced on our website. We have put it on our social media. And then we also we've been announcing this again at all of the business association meetings, who have included it in their minutes when they send out emails. And then anybody who had reached out to us, whether it was directly or we had gotten some referrals from several council members of folks that had not applied during the first round, we have reached out to them directly to encourage them to apply. In addition, as you will hear from Dan in a moment, Dan has been great about making sure that he's been communicating it to all businesses as he's been getting out into the community. So before I turn it over to Dan, I will pause there and see if there's any questions on the ARPA grant program.
Are there any questions? I would just like to offer a brief commentary. Thank you very much for all the work that's been done so far. It definitely, this $10,000 may not seem like a huge sum of money in the scope of dollars when people think about business survival. But for many of these businesses, this will be a lifeline that could potentially carry them over to the next season, next operating calendar, whatever, however they operate. It's so crucial. I'd also like to commend many of my colleagues who have made contact with small businesses that we know we approached earlier on round one and who did not take advantage of this program, and I believe have submitted applications or made inquiry this round. I know I personally have had 3 detailed conversations with either a nonprofit organization and or a small business, and I encourage them to apply. I said the devil obviously is in the details. I don't really know all your economic background, but if you believe that this is something that will be helpful, please take the necessary steps to try to participate in the program. I said, worst case scenario, it's a win-win. At least you'll find out whether or not you're eligible, and worst case scenario is you'll receive a grant for $10,000, which will be very, very helpful. So I'm very appreciative that we did have this second round going forward. It was our intent to distribute, I think it was what, $200 million, or
$2 million. Yeah.
I'm actually not 200, right? $2 million. 200 million would be an awesome amount, but $2 million. But I still think that we remain pretty steadfast to accomplish that. And that is, and I've said this all along, our ability to use our ARPA money for economic development purposes and to keep nonprofits and businesses viable is so key to how these funds were intended to be used. So thank you for the efforts that have been employed so far. I do commend the efforts of Patty Lewis in finance to do this, because that's also so important on the back end when we have to report back to the federal government as to how the funds are awarded and used. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also just note one more thing. So we will not have a hard deadline this round. So what we've decided, where we did have a 30-day application period in the first round, since we've opened on November 1st, we'll have a rolling application deadline. So we will accept applications in this program until the money is spent out. I also note that while we've received about 20 applications in this newest round, we have a lot of communications from folks asking questions. And I would just both thank you and the council for your communications with businesses and nonprofits, and then just encourage folks, anybody that has a question about the program eligibility, whether they think that they should apply, please reach out to us directly. So the email that anybody can contact is arpagrant@westhartfordct.gov, or feel free to reach out to myself or Dan directly. And then through you, Mr. Chair, I just would like to turn over to Dan Page for a brief update on his work. I will just tee it up by saying Dan has been with us as our economic development specialist for almost 3 months now. It has been a tremendous resource, I think, both for the business community as well as the economic development division. Dan has been working very hard to really pick up on a lot of the work that we could not do before, and making sure that we are even more visible within the community. So Dan, if you could please give a brief update and summary on some of your work, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, as Kristen mentioned, I've been on board with the town now since the beginning of September, really the last week of August. I came on board. So a large portion of my work that I've been doing has really been both getting acclimated to town and learning the industries that we have here in town. And that's been achieved by really getting out and meeting with a lot of different business owners and managers of close to 100 businesses now. So this has served, again, as sort of helping me become familiar with our business space, with our business districts, as well as acting in the role of being an ombudsman for the business. So Kristen's been excellent in connecting me to different areas and industries, and I visited businesses in every district in town. I try to alternate my days, in different districts so that we're casting a large net and we're reaching every business in every area. So I think from a town perspective, it's beneficial so we can kind of get a holistic approach and understanding on really how each business district is doing as well as industry. So visited with a lot of retail and venturing into manufacturing and commercial office. So really trying to, again, just hit every element of the economy that we have in town. So, the feedback in general has been really positive. I think, I think a lot of businesses are happy to be getting out of what we've been dealing with for, the past 24 months, really over that now. And I think that there's really just a positive feeling of getting out of that. Inevitably, there's some businesses that ask for additional help. Help navigating town services. We'd mentioned building permits earlier. So navigating their way around town services and getting connected to things like the ARPA grant program. And Mr. Chair, you hit the nail on the head. The grant, although not massive, is huge for these businesses, and they see that the town is there to help and be willing to help. And if they're not eligible for the grant program, we're at least getting our foot in the door and talking with them and connecting them to ways that we can help them. So happy to speak with anyone after the meeting or set up a time to chat. Don't want to take too much of the meeting time today, but I can provide my number to you. And in my email, I'm always accessible anytime you need to talk or you'd like to speak more about some of the work that we've been doing. But I'm really glad to be here. Kristen is phenomenal in what she does. And so looking at it from an economic development perspective, working in different parts of the state, being on board here in town and helping contribute to the positive economic development growth that we have here has really been awesome. So I'm glad to be here. And again, anytime any of you would like to speak more about some of the work that I've been doing, I'm happy to meet with you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pesh, and welcome aboard. We're very excited to have you as part of our economic development team, which is so vital to our community. I do have a question because it goes back to when we started to meet just as two different types of committees during the beginning of COVID. One talked about economic issues and the other talked about a lot of different social needs and things of that nature. And one of the things that fell under the economic development aspect was workforce development and employers' needs for qualified employees, or basically maybe at this point employees, okay, to run their operations. So I know we haven't really talked about that lately, but and if we're not prepared today to talk about what steps we're taking with respect to assisting businesses in terms of training, recruitment of workforce, and outreach to the various segments of our community, we could possibly put that as a future agenda item. But I do remember that was one of the key points we had in our economic development plan during COVID and coming out of COVID. Ms. Gorski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we are still working on workforce development. So that is something that Dan and I more recently worked on, and Dan's going to start to really spend a lot more time on, especially as he's been so active within the business community. So, you know, in terms of workforce development, we work very closely still today with Capital Workforce Partners, who is the regional workforce development board. So when we have spoken with them more recently, they say that West Hartford is one of their strongest relationships of any community within the region because we give so many referrals over to them. So our referrals really come from working with the business community and doing those different types of touch points, whether it's through email, a phone call, through business visits, as Dan had mentioned, understanding what needs they have and where we can help fill in the gap. So in addition to Capital Workforce Partners and a lot of the training dollars and hiring abilities that they have through American Job Centers, Dan recently met with the adult education department within town and started to talk about, you know, how we can work more closely together. So those are, you know, efforts that come off of some of the business visits that we had pre-COVID, some of the information that we learned through COVID, and now that we have another staff member who can really hit the ground running with that. So to talk about, you know, what abilities that we have within the town structure outside of our division that can help us work with the business community to make sure that, you know, they are getting adequately trained folks that are coming through the door, or if they have people on their payroll that need additional training, do we have the abilities to do that through adult education, or do we have the abilities to do that through Capital Workforce Partners? So actually a very timely question as we started to really pick that effort back up within the last 2 weeks. So, you know, as we work through some ideas and concepts of what we might be able to do to support the business community better, we'd be happy to bring that back to CPED at a future meeting.
Thank you for your response. And what really triggered that is, I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, but one just has to pick up any type of economic business publication, whether it be online or in print, and notice the significant layoffs in a lot of tech industries, a lot of things that are in that space, as well as the decline of jobs in the mortgage environment nationwide. So there's been a shift as to what the needs are in several sectors. And I do believe that we do have quite a few people in our community who are employed in these sectors who've been able to work remotely, especially through the pandemic, and been supported by these various employers. So I think this would be ripe for a future agenda item. I just think we also need to focus on how the individual resident would know where to turn to, and how we get the message out that there are resources available from the town to point them in the right direction. Obviously, a lot of people know about, you know, networking and things of that nature, but sometimes it's bigger than that. And you pointed out the Capital Workforce and American Jobs and those centers, and I think people are quite aware of many of those things. But I think if people have that touch point here somewhere in town hall, it might make them feel a little at ease that, wow, the town has really got a lot of things covered here, and I think that would be wonderful. So we're definitely hitting the ball out of the park better than any community, and we're definitely, to continue the analogy, we're probably the home run leaders in the league here. So, but we just don't want to rest on that. We just want to continue to perform better than all the other people, because that's why people choose to live in our community, is because of what the services that we offer our residents. And so thank you very much. Great job, great report. It was a great, and also would be remiss because we have not met, your economic development report was wonderful as you went through the various sectors in our community during the luncheon. It was very well received. And we do have a very positive story to tell. And I'm glad that the story has been told and will be continued to be told, because I think success greets more success. And keeping a positive attitude. People want to be around people who are positive. They want to be in communities that are positive. And we want to drown out the doomsayers, or whatever you call them, the Debbie Downers. So we really appreciate all the work that's being done here. It is so critical to our mission. And I just want to thank you for doing that. With that said, does anyone else have any future agenda items? I know we have a lot we heard about today from with respect to the West Hartford infrastructure, with respect to the wayfinding, with respect to more ARPA. We're quite busy, which is kind of good. So if anyone has anything, if you can't think of something today, just let the manager know, and we can get that on the next agenda. Seeing that, does anyone else have anything else for the good of the group? Seeing nothing, I just want to wish everyone a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving holiday. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to spend it with your family, something we probably haven't been able to really appreciate the past few years. And may it be one of joy that you're able to gather and appreciate all the things that we are thankful for. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, everyone.